Hey everybody. Those of you who didn't see the sign or were sleeping here, sleeping off whatever partner party you were at last night, this is 5 dev tips every admin should know. Hopefully you're where you want to be. If not, I can't see a freaking thing because of these lights anyway, so if you leave, I'm not going to take it personally. I'm Chris DeGore. Thanks. I'm a senior solution engineer at Salesforce. What that really means is I'm a nerd. I tinker with nerdy stuff. I was not a CS major in college, but nowadays I code way more than I probably expected I would when I was in college. So I'm really trying to help you guys kind of get started with that journey. Now, to kick everything off, we have to show this slide. The slide you've seen 600 times, and the slide that my fiance, who is an intellectual property lawyer, isn't even really that interested in. The safe harbor slide. Basically, I'm going to tell you about stuff that's all today. I don't think I'm telling you about future stuff, but if I do, treat anything I say that's coming as like me selling you snake oil or something, and don't buy based on that, buy on the other stuff. Probably shouldn't have set myself up as a snake oil salesman, but whatever. Let's get going. So this is my promise slide to you guys. By now, you guys have gotten a lot of great information. And you've gone to a lot of events, and it's Thursday, and I'm actually impressed so many of you made it all the way to Thursday. My vow to you is I want to try to keep this A, as unprofessional as possible, because I am terrible at building professional slides, but B, I want to stay meat and potatoes. I'm not going to get into fluff. I'm not going to talk revolutions. I'm going to talk, let's see where I can give you guys tips, guidance, ideas to get you started on getting even more gnarly with our platform. And so with that, I just kind of want to welcome you guys here. You as admins honestly haven't gotten nearly enough love over the last few years. Like we have an admin zone now, which is kind of cool. Finally, it's something, but I think the number one question I would always get staffing the dev zone is, hey, I'm an admin, I know Salesforce front and back. How do I start building this? And I say Apex, and then the look is, oh God, no. You guys are starting to kind of get into this new path, and you're looking out there and you're seeing what looks like Everest. You're going on forums and seeing code snippets and everything, and none of it makes sense, and people are talking about polymorphism and all sorts of random stuff, and it's difficult to find a place to start that isn't, oh, hey, go to the junior college and take a bunch of classes on Java, or, you know, oh, go spend a week here, a week there. And kind of one of the things I want to bring out to you guys is the first thing that you should know when you start to take on this is it's really not about who's the best programmer. We should probably close the door so the devs don't hear me. But it's really not about that, right? Like they'll fight about that and they'll get into all sorts of weird arguments. We do that. It's actually who's more resourceful, and that's going to be what gets you through. Like I said, I wasn't a CS major. I know plenty of guys that'll code around me, but I'm usually closer to a business problem when I need to solve it, just like you guys probably are. And I'm good at finding the resources I need. Like I live inside the reference guides because I have not memorized everything in Apex like other people have. And it's the same thing with Lightning rolling out. None of these devs are the experts at Lightning. They're just now getting into it. And this is a scenario where once you learn how to like find the answers and find solutions to everything, you're actually going to be a lot more powerful than you think. And so today, these are kind of the 5 core areas I want to start off as we kind of maintain this whole Mount Everest analogy that gets away from me like halfway through this deck. It's going to be kind of around building the foundation for everything you're doing. We're going to be talking about your data model and things like that. There's going to be a discussion around managing everything, finding ways to customize UIs and customize things with as little kind of crazy code as we can manage. Finally, we're going to talk about creation, really getting into when you start coding. And then the last part, which people ignore, but I really need to nail home is the most important part, is we're going to keep our job, and we're going to test all of the changes we make. Because if we don't, production starts to turn into this like Michael Bay movie, and that never ends well for anyone. All right, so let's start at the beginning. I loved this movie. If you haven't seen it, you need to go see it. Your data model needs to be the place that you guys begin. This thing is going to be the blueprint, the foundation for everything you do. And that seems kind of straightforward, right? It's like, okay, I want to build with contacts. I'm going to use a contact. It gets more interesting from that. Like the contact object right now, it's got a couple of address fields on there. But what if you had a scenario in which your customers could have an unlimited number of places they lived because they're rich or something? It would be difficult to model that with fields on the contact object, right? Because you would have address 1, address 2, address 3, address 4, and it would just get kind of gnarly. And it's deciding when things become their own objects, when things retain as fields within existing objects. These are the sorts of things that you guys have to make decisions on when you start building these projects. And you make these decisions based on the use cases you're trying to solve. And when it comes to building your data model, for some reason people are still doing next save, which drives me insane because there's no reason to do that anymore. You really need to start using Schema Builder if you haven't already. The big reasons you're doing this, I think my biggest reason for it is this is the only way in Salesforce you can actually get a big picture view of everything that's going on. How are things connecting to one another? How are things hooked into each other? What are the fields that exist? The other side, I mean, it's prettier and it's faster because you have this drag and drop. You're not going through 10 freaking pages to create a new custom text field just so you can give someone a secondary title. Let me show you what I mean for those of you. Who here has used the Schema Builder, by the way? That is a good number of hands. Not as many hands as I would have liked to see, but it's cool. I mean, to be fair, if you all raised your hand, I would kind of not need to have a demo here, would I? So it's in setups on that left-hand nav. It's under Schema Builder. Use the quick search thing at the top to start typing in Schema Builder. That's another big tip you guys should always be using. And you'll see it here. Actually, I'm going to mirror my screens. It's kind of difficult to see all the way down there. There we go. Okay, cool. And if I show all of my objects in here, I have a crazy complicated, yeah, I tinker a lot, so sorry for that. But what I can do here is I can click on this Elements tab, right? And I can just drag and drop an object over. And so this is essentially the same create form you're used to. I'll call this presentations. You know, the consonant val, do you want to use an auto number? Do you want to use text, reports? You know, this is all stuff that you guys are probably somewhat familiar with next save if you've ever done that. I'm going to call the old way of doing things next save because there's no real easy way to describe it. And boom, a table's been made. Now, there's a set of pages that you did not see pop up with this, right? All those permissions, right? When it gives you the list of all the profiles and you click 300 freaking things. Schema Builder, and then it's another advantage I think it gives you over the traditional way of doing things. It separates security and build for you. So when you're building this object, you don't hit check all, open it up to everyone, and then forget about it 6 months later when you actually roll out the product and for some reason everyone sees all of your sales data. And that can be a good thing to do because you can focus on building everything first and then going back and applying the security model, the roles, the profiles accordingly. Now if I create another presentation, or another object, sorry, and I call this internet joke. All right, and save. Just give you an example here. I can drag over a lookup. So, you know, I make a lot of presentations. I want to make sure I don't, you know, duplicate my internet jokes. Otherwise, people will be bored because I keep doing like business cat or something and be bad. And so once I've created that, it'll give me a link here. Now, I've hid the other 40 bajillion freaking objects in my org just so I can go through and I can see exactly what I'm modeling. Now, with 2 objects, it's not too bad, right? You can kind of keep that in your head. But start extrapolating this out to more. This can start to get really, really gnarly and complicated. Having what's known as an entity relationship diagram, or ERD, that will help you manage how everything's interconnected. And this will help down the line when you start thinking about, you know, creating reports, creating dashboards, creating UIs to match these sorts of things. So definitely live in this place if you don't already. And we're off. All right, so we now have these buckets essentially to start hucking things into. As you can tell, I'm already getting out of the marketing thing with all the amazing, no, we have buckets to throw stuff into. Being admins, I'm willing to bet you have all run into the bad data problem or other scenarios which don't work. And the tool I want you to talk about when it comes to managing is Workbench. Now, this is going to be the first step of code that we talk about in any kind of way, which is Sockle. I don't know how many of you have used Sockle. I don't know how many of you haven't. But I'm going to tell you right now, Sockle is dirt freaking simple. It looks super complicated at first because you've got like all this stuff in that long box down there. Really, it selects stuff from places where things are special. That's pretty much it. Like you can say, oh, you know, only give me 5, or you can say order by X. And to do that, you actually say order by this thing. ascending. It's dirt simple once you start playing around with it, and it's really easy to get started with. Now, you can get super complicated down the line, and I'm not even going to get there, but it's definitely good to start to understand how those SOQL queries work, because as you guys start working with code going forward, as you start working with APIs going forward, and even when you work with tools like Workbench, SOQL is the language that's running in the back to actually get data out of Salesforce. It's our, you may have heard of SQL. If you look at this, it's almost identical to SQL in a lot of ways. It's the Salesforce object query language, so that way we can add that little O there. Workbench, the big gains you're going to get from here is you can actually look at all of the data and everything inside your instance of Salesforce from this app. This app is a web-based app that we put out for you. You search Workbench and Developer Force, it'll pop up, and I'll show you in a second. What's really, really cool with this is going to be the fact that you can write these queries from scratch without actually writing the queries. And this is something that I actually had to be turned on to by a friend of mine, Sam Reddy, who is like the most popular freaking person nowadays, which is super cool. So I'm going to go workbench.developerforce.com, agree to the terms of service. And so you didn't get to see it there because I've already logged into this sucker, but what happens is you get that OAuth screen, the same one you guys see when you're on like Salesforce One or any other application you use. And I got a bunch of tools. Let me see if I can bring this. Make that actually something you guys can read as opposed to just squinting at. So I got a bunch of different tools up here, right? I can go into queries, I can go into data, so I could do data loads, I could do mass deletes if I wanted to. Migration is around metadata, so if you have done deploys from your sandbox into production, sometimes there's things that don't really come across really well. Other times you may want to have a package that you want to deploy to multiple sandboxes at the same time. Maybe it's some project that you want a bunch of different guys tinkering on at once. This can be how you do that. You deploy them as zip file packages. Now what I told you about is this query one around SOQL query search. So we'll pick an object, we'll go with account, everyone knows account. And it gives me all of the different fields inside my orgs, even including the custom ones, right? So I can pick like 4 of them. And let's say we'll sort by apparently site. Why not? Okay, so cool, I'm point and clicking and that's Salesforcean and whatnot. What's even better though is it's actually creating the SOQL query for me down below. So as you guys are kind of learning it, you don't have to dive in, you don't have to go full, whole hog into this sucker. You can actually come here, point, click, poke a bunch of stuff, and it'll slowly build you out a query. If I run this, it'll give me the fields I asked for in the order I asked for whatever limit I ask for it. This is cool if you want to test queries out. Let's say you're making a page for your top 10 accounts and you're not quite sure what that's supposed to look like. This can be a way that you can put it together really simply, view it in a format that's easily digestible. It can also be a way, if you want, to download chunks of data through CSV or XML. So if you're playing with stuff in Excel, you're putting together some crazy slice and dice graph that we can't do for whatever reason, I guess A, I should be selling you on Wave, but B, you could just export to bulk CSV, pump it into whatever the system you want to do it with, and play around as you wish. Super cool, super quick. Now, another neat thing about this is, what is it? My REST Explorer. Okay, so since, like 2 years ago, we have jammed the word API at you guys every single time we could, right? And then you're like, okay, well, where are these APIs? What are these? This will actually let you see our APIs and understand what these endpoints are. So these endpoints basically go on the end of, x.salesforce.com. And you can explore through them. So let's say you're working with developers who are building you a system on some other platform. And they come to you and they say, hey, we need to know how to get to your APIs. Which APIs are we hitting? What are we hitting? Now, for a lot of the standard ones, we've got plenty of documentation. But where it gets interesting is you have a bunch of your custom objects, right? Well, they have their own API endpoints, and you want to be able to relay this across. So if I click on S objects, what this will do is actually make a call that then goes and gets all of the S objects in my instance of Salesforce, which I've got a lot, so it might be a second. There we go. Pop open this folder here, and there's all of my stuff. So let's see, we created presentation, right? So go down, Boom. It's my presentation underscore C. Tell me a bunch of information about it. If I want to get, let's see, it's feed enabled so it can do things. And then pass here, I have URLs. And so then these are then all the individual APIs that are opened up for that object I created. So if I wanted to get describe information to tell me all of the individual fields and what they look like, or if I wanted to get the layouts and understand what they are, this is something that I can reference. So this is a really good way, if you start playing around with APIs, to also start playing with, okay, well, what can I do, and how does my metadata look as a whole and things. I wouldn't use this to try to map out your entire instance of Salesforce, because it's not really graphical and it's not great for that, but it can be really good for tinkering. And I'm going to tell you right now, tinkering is going to be how you learn this stuff. Like, they're not going to throw some crazy project at you and be like, sink or swim. You've got to tinker and come up with, be like, oh man, if I could do X, what could I do with it? And you'll start to kind of pick this up gradually as you go. So basically, when it comes to this sort of stuff, what I want you to do is just manage all the things here. If you manage your data when you start building and you manage the API usage and such, it's going to save you a lot of hassle early on. Bad data equals bad apps, and this can be another tool for you guys to kind of monitor that, not just as admins, but when you start creating as developers. If you're using bad test data, we're going to get to test. If you're not paying attention to what that's going to look like, what your users are going to put in, you're potentially putting out an app that is technologically really useful, but at the end of the day could start blowing everything up. And I'm generally against the blowing of everything up. So we're going to keep you away from that. All right, so customize. I needed to work hard here to figure out how to give you guys more tips to customize UI, still without resorting to real code, right? I want a page that looks slightly different than your page, Visualforce. Like, no one likes hearing that. Everyone's like, oh, awesome, now I can go pay some dude to come in or spend 6 months and figure out how to do this or whatever, right? I initially was going to talk about formula fields, and then Sam smacked me upside the head and was like, dude, they're admins, they know what formula fields are. I was like, oh, that's a good point. And I picked that picture because it like customizes the shoe, I think. So the tool a lot of people still aren't using, developers still aren't using, which drives me insane, is Flow. For those of you that haven't used Flow, looks kind of like this. It's kind of like a Visio sort of look, right? Except every single box that you see on here is a step that's being taken, or it's a screen that's being built. And it's point and click in that sense. So there's two things you can build here. You build processes, but they could be ones that run in the background. So think like a mix between what workflows can do and what Apex triggers can do. And the other side is each of these could be individual screens. So you could be creating a customized like wizard in a sense, right? To walk your customers or walk your employees through a step-by-step process. Think like call scripts for a service agent. Now you may want to walk them through a very specific set of things that says if they say A, go up here. If they say B, go down here. Loop through all of their cases and ask them how they do. These are the sorts of things that you can put together that ordinarily, if you had come to me before Flow, I would have said, Apex, Visualforce, have fun. This will actually make it a little more interesting what you can pull out before you go to code. And more interesting than that, in my opinion, is with Salesforce 1, we can put Flow, we call them interviews, inside a Visualforce page. And since you can do that, you can actually apply styling to the flow to make it fit a phone's form factor. So in that scenario, up front, yes, you're going to need to go find someone to build the CSS and everything to make it look nice. But from that point on, you would be able to customize this with point and click and not have to go get code help every time you want to add a new question, every time you want to add a new field, things like that. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. As you can tell, I'm not a big fan of PowerPoint. I'm more a fan of actually showing you guys things. If you guys really like PowerPoint, sorry, I guess. All right, so you'll find this under Create, Workflow and Approval with Flows. I've gone ahead and kind of pre-built half of one here. It's going to be like a baking show, right, where I'll show you a bit of a finished product. And it's going to be super simple, though. Yes, Salesforce. Thank you. All right, so this is a super simple flow. It's my awesome presentation thing. My name is Chris. My company is SFTC. Click Next. It loads. Yay, I'm awesome. Real simple, right? But you can think about how you would lead this through. It would be asking, oh, how are you doing today, this sort of thing. I can click finish, go previous I want. Super simple, 1, 2, 3. Now what's happening in the middle there is this record create box here. Can everyone see that okay? Probably kind of an eye chart, but I'll keep calling it out here. That record create is actually taking what I'm filling out in that first, come on. This actually takes what I'm filling out in that first pane, and it's inserting a new lead into my database. Down here, what we're doing is I'm mapping fields in my lead object with fields that I just entered. So I could go back into my lead object, and I have a Chris from SFDC that has now been net new created. As far as what screen creation looks like, let me go ahead and create a new one for you guys and show you what it is. So I can drag a screen from here, and I can drop it in. And we'll call this score screen. And on here, I can add fields. So I'll add some display text. And the display text, I'll say, give me a score, you bum. Give that a label. And then I can add a field. So here we'll add radio buttons. Radio score. Value will be a number. And then I've got choices here. So, oh, why are my scores not here? So I can create a new type of score if I want. So create a new score here. So I'll call this 1. It'll be a number. The value will be 1. This one, we'll create another one. 2. I'm not about to create more than 2, because that will be boring to watch. And click OK. So I now have this other screen. So to add that to my flow, I'm going to delete this line here, and just drag a line here, and drag that line back down there. And so now I've just added this new screen to the flow of what my process is going to be. Now, you guys, you can understand how I don't want to get fired, so I'm going to add a conditional in here instead. So instead of linking that directly, I'm going to create a decision element. This decision element is don't lose my job. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to check that score. So from screen input fields here, screen choice fields here, I have that radio. And I'm going to say this needs to equal 2. And that is now a condition for this particular, this is now a condition for this decision tree. And then I have a default, which would see, bad score. We'll call this actually good score. Click OK. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my score screen go to this decision tree first. Then we're going to connect this decision tree to the record create, and it'll ask, OK, well, which one do you want to go? So I'll say, if it's a good score, we're going to create a lead. If it's a bad score, we're going to tell the person we created a lead, and we're just going to go directly to the screen. Now, some of you are probably watching and being like, well, wait a minute, you didn't add that score to the actual input, and you are correct. So here I have my presentation score, and I'm connecting that to radio score. So this way, the only scores that will ever come in are me doing well, and I never have to worry about getting in trouble. So I can save this, run it. Goes to still at SFDC. Oh, I should probably save it first. And so now here's my screen on getting a score, so I'll do 2. That'll go through the actual database and get me to the closing screen. So now if I close this sucker out, I go to leads. There are all the leads that I created real quick, right? And here's the last one I created with my presentation score of 2. So ridiculous demo of showing how it works. but hopefully it kind of conveys to you guys what you guys could potentially do, right? You can create your own pages. You can add your own images into those and those sorts of things to actually brand it out and make it look like your company so it's not, just really dry Salesforcean. But it gives you the ability not just to create, but to update, to maintain, to adjust going forward with a minimum amount of code necessary. All right, time to get to the ugly stuff. At some point, you're not going to be able to build more stuff without at least dabbling in code. You can have other groups come in, but that's not what this is about. I need to kind of give you guys the tools to get started on getting to the bigger you. I'm not going to lie, it's a big step, but the advantage that you can do once you have a couple of quick tips and you've played with a couple of different things is quite large compared to what you can do with point and click. Really, the training wheels come off and you can do pretty much whatever, and you can survive an extra hit from a Goomba. So I could go into showing you code and being like, oh, look, Apex, and you would be bored. So I'm not going to. I'm going to give you the one tip that I learned while learning Apex, while learning any technology, really. Essentially, you're never in this alone. I would tell you 5 years ago, you were more alone because it was new, right? Now you're not. The first place you should go, Developer.Force, or developer.salesforce.com now, get these workbooks. They have them in that huge line that you guys have seen all freaking week. Wait in that line or don't. You can go online. You can get the soft copies, really. It's not that big a deal. Or holler at your account exec and be like, I super want all of these books, yay, and they will just send them to you. I'm probably not supposed to say that. The second point here is there's lots of example code you can get. So the App Exchange has something called Force.com Labs. They're all internal projects we create, apps that we build internally, and then we just hand them out to you guys. And they're all open source, which means you can tear that apart and actually look to see how people made things. And you can just add little bits and little snippets and hook in there to be able to create your custom application as well. The little squid guy on the left is the icon for GitHub. You guys have probably heard about that a lot as well. There's a Force.com, all spelled out, GitHub, which our developer marketing team actually maintains. They build out project after project after project. And these could be anything from here's a quick Visualforce page to show contacts to here's an iOS app that connects X and Y and Z. Generally, that's what they use whenever you see any of the blogs from Developer.Force, which can be another great way to learn because those guys are just consistently tinkering and then talking about how they work with things. These two kind of sets of information, right, the documentation and the examples are really, really great. They're going to build the core of what you kind of learn as you take this plunge. But I'm going to tell you the biggest one that you're going to actually freaking use all the time, because it's the one I freaking use all the time, is Google. You can Google freaking anything at this point on their platform, and someone has done it, complained about it, been told how to do it by somebody smarter, and everything's worked out really well. I Google stuff every freaking day. I had to build you're not going to believe this, I had to build a Flappy Bird connected to Salesforce for my last session. I've never built a Flappy Bird. Google Flappy Bird, okay, here's all these tutorials. Okay, how do I connect this to actually Salesforce? Boom, done. No one had actually done those two at the same point, but someone's done each of the individual bits of the problem. And if you can separate out and encapsulate each of the little chunks of what you're trying to accomplish, it's a lot easier than just looking at this and being like, I have no freaking idea how to do it. So Google, for those of you that maybe went to sleep because we were nice enough to turn the lights down because of partner parties and stuff, and you woke up now, freaking Google. All the things. By the way, this is the most fun slide I've ever got to build. I didn't know you could do animated GIFs on this slide. I was ecstatic, unnecessarily so. Okay, so an actual tip aside from just Google stuff. Field sets. Field sets are a really tiny thing that came out that no one paid attention to, but everyone should have paid attention to because it makes everyone's job easier. If you go into create for your objects, you go into customize, you'll see field sets as a new thing. If you click new, it kind of looks like a layout editor. You drag, you drop, you read order, it's nice. What this actually powers is code. So this translates, I know I told you I wouldn't show you code, but I'm showing you code. This is Visualforce on the right-hand side, right? On the top, that's how I as a developer would have to write this. Output field, output field, output field, output field. On the bottom, it's one line. Output field, loop through, get everything from this field set. Now, that's nice for the dev because we're lazy and we don't want to have to write that 100 times over. It's nicer because when you have to go and add that new field that you just created to the page, go to the field set, drag, drop, save, and it's done. No one has to go back into the page. No one has to redevelop for the page or anything. It gives you guys as admins or other BAs that you might be working with control to adjust things. Use this wherever you can. This will save you so much freaking time. That's my big tip. The Google thing was just a freebie. Okay, I've got 10 minutes left, so I'm going to race through this. This is probably the other most important part of this. You guys are used to sandboxes and point and click, and that's nice and all. When it comes to code, stuff blows up. It legit explodes. You don't know why. There are people screaming in the streets, and if the salespeople go down on the last day of the month, your office will look like Mad Max. It will be terrible. This is how you stop that. Test your code. Test your code. Test your code in sandbox, not in production, and make sure it explodes. Code can break in so many different ways that if you're used to the point-and-click way of doing things in Salesforce, there's only so many ways it can break, right? Like if you write an assignment rule wrong or something, the assignment rule won't explode and cause gremlins to come out of things. But if you do that in code, it can have really weird effects that you might not see coming. And so for that, we have what are known as test classes. So I'm going to give you a really quick example of this, and you'll see what I mean. So I'm opening up the developer console. Oh, you will learn what this puppy is soon enough. Can I zoom in on this? Cool. I have right here a real simple trigger. I call it the bacon blocker. I work at a prosciutto company, and bacon is the bane of my existence, so I have created a rule in Salesforce. It's really basic code. It's almost English, right? For every feed item, that's a chatter post. If that body contains the word bacon, we're getting rid of the bacon. We take that body and we replace bacon with prosciutto. So if I go out here and I say, man, I love me some bacon, the system will say, no, you don't. You love you some prosciutto. Okay, cool. Super easy code, right? All right. Now, test coverage. The real reason I'm showing you this. I have this. This is test coverage for bacon blocker, because if bacon blocker blows up, someone's going to yell at me for blowing something up to prevent bacon. I don't have great use cases, sorry. Okay, so let's talk about what's happening here. Up here at the very top, I'm creating the data that's going to kick off this, right? I've created a new post. In the body of the post, I've created this thing that says bacon. I've associated the post to my chatter profile, and then I've inserted it. Once I've inserted it into the database, I do a query using SOQL, like we talked about earlier, right? Select things from a spot, order by this. So basically, this is saying, get me the last one that was created, the one I just inserted. And then I'm going to do what's known as an assert. And I'm going to say, this better say prosciutto, because if it says bacon, we've got a problem. That's basically what we're talking about when we talk about test coverage. So I can run this test. You'll see it running down here. Doot, doot, doot. Won't crash. It says it passes. There's no errors. I can open up bacon blocker. So if I open up bacon blocker again and I check the code coverage for my test, it actually goes line by line by line. So what you're trying to accomplish when you do test coverage is you want to execute every line of Apex that you've written so you can test to make sure that it does things. If I put an if statement in here that says, if it says BLT, you would see those lines show up as red because it doesn't say BLT, how dare you, and it's not actually executing. So when you create code, and you're going to get there, you want to start thinking about the test coverage for the code. It's boring, it's ugly, no one freaking likes to write it. But if you don't test this out and it starts inserting prosciutto into your CEO's posts, man, this got away from me. That's going to be bad. You're going to get canned, and then you'll come yell at me because I didn't tell you about test coverage. So you can't. I told you about test coverage. Tough. Now, I've hammered you with a ton of stuff. Why? Okay, my animation sucked today. There we go. I hammered you with a ton of stuff. If you're taking pictures of slides, take a picture of this slide. It's a nice slide. It's pretty. I like the unification of the developer site thing on the top. There's a lot of different ways that you guys can learn when it comes to Salesforce, and everyone learns differently. If you made me sit in a week-long class, I would go nuts because I'm not in college anymore and I don't want to go back. So I learn more on the left. If you want to learn at your own pace, you're doing your own sort of thing, you like reading tutorials and tinkering and doing your own stuff, developer.salesforce.com, #1 spot. Past that, I told you, Bitly has a handful of things. If you want to play with Workbench, there's the Bitly link, which is Workbench is awesome. That'll give you a quick link to Workbench so you can toy with that. SF99, have any of you guys seen that site before? Yeah, that's like a guy who's like learned how to dev, and he's kind of showing you guys, that's probably the best blog I've seen for someone that's really kind of learning. So search, it's like SFDC99 actually, I think, but search that, read this guy's blog, and honestly go step by step by step by step. He will lay out test coverage, he'll lay out all sorts of stuff. It's a phenomenal blog to learn how to do things from kind of ground zero. Second set on here, you like the YouTubes, you want to, videos and stuff. Developerforce.com, yay. Force.com Fridays, if you haven't seen that webinar series, very, very good at intro level stuff. Some of it may be too intro level for you guys. Others will talk about Visualforce Apex and things like that. Another great site is Pluralsight. This is more at your own pace videos. It's cheap. It's not. They charge a little bit. It's not too much. And it again can be good if you want a little more structure to your learning path, but not the whole hog kind of classroom scenario. And then the last is you'll actually find all of these developer sessions. There's a beginner playlist from last year that's really good. I'm assuming they're going to do the same thing this year on YouTube. So you can watch other people like me run around and dance on stage and talk to you guys about stuff. These can be really good if you like video. That's kind of how you learn. You want someone talking to you, but you don't need the structure for class. And for the rest of you, Salesforce U, there are full classes. You guys could easily probably breeze through 401. 401 is largely a point-and-click development training week, whereas 501 is more heavy into code. So I can definitely say that 401 is worth your time if you want to start to dabble into all the sorts of crazy stuff you can do and pass that dev certification. And then 501, you give yourself some time before 501. I haven't even dealt with 501 yet. The other side of college, in my analogy here, is Meetup. There are developer user groups in pretty much every major market. If you're in here in the South Bay, or if you're here in the Bay Area, there's tons of them. The size and the quality of which vary. They're all on meetup.com. This can be a great way for you to meet other developers, meet other people that are in the same boat, meet other people that have run into the same challenges you might be running into, and get the reality from somebody that's not paid to tell you that everything's great. All right, that can be super good. They can be like, oh yeah, that thing that you're trying to use, oh, it's terrible, and this thing over here. It can be a great way to go about, get some more honesty, and make some new friends, right? Because, networking, social stuff. Hopefully your boss isn't in the room. And with that, I've got a couple of minutes. I'm happy to take any questions. We've got a mic, I think, in the middle that's logged on. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day. Hope your week wasn't too bad.